I'm currently at the Cape Girardeau riverfront overlooking the mighty Mississippi. This body of water is the reason many towns and cities exist, including St. Louis and, of course, Cape, which has a little history in its own. For example, President Taft stood in this very spot I'm sitting at 116 years ago. But today, I'd like to take you to Germany on the Rhine, where many castles overlook the river.
You know, people often ask me, Morgan, why do you like history so much? The answer is, it helps me understand where we come from. It helps me understand where we're going. It helps me understand why we're in the spot we're in. But as much as I love history, I didn't know a damn thing about castles until a few weeks ago. A few months ago, I traveled to Germany and I cruised up the Rhine River. On the banks, you'll see castles involved in World War II, some are ruins now, some are museums. It's a very historic river, a very old river. I mean, Julius Caesar built bridges 2,000 years ago over the Rhine River. But let's get straight to it. This is before and after castles on the Rhine.
Let's begin in the 12th and 13th centuries with power, control, and defense. There's two castles in particular to look at, starting with the beautiful Marksburg. This structure is a wonderful testament to the builders of the 12th century, especially since despite being one of the oldest castles on the river, it's the only hilltop castle on the Middle Rhine to never be destroyed. It would eventually be modified with cannons, which prevented it from being attacked and destroyed like many other castles in the 1600s during times of war. It would suffer some damage during the Second World War when American military attacked the Nazis who were hiding there. Ehrenfels was also a medieval stronghold, especially concerning economic control. That's because it would enforce tolls on passing ships, and if they didn't comply, they would be met with arrows. And with Ehrenfels being on a steep hill near a narrow passage on the river, it was almost impossible for any ship to sneak by. But not all fortresses were built for defense and collecting tolls. Some were more of a feudal residence, a home of someone noble, or a fun place that hosted parties. Even hunting lodges, like Sunnik, or so that was the plan. In 1834, decades after being destroyed in the 9 Years' War, the Crown Prince of Prussia, Frederick William IV, along with his brothers, purchased and remodeled the dilapidated castle with the goal of converting it into a hunting lodge, a royal hunting lodge. Sunnik would end up in public hands as a state property following a quarrel between the family before reconstruction was completed. The House of Schönberg was a noble family which, you may have guessed, lived in a castle named after the family. They ruled over the town of Oberwessel for centuries. Frederick Schönberg, who lived in the 1600s, was a notable military general under the King of France, but in that same century the castle would fall into ruins in the 9 Years' War. Stolzenfels was a toll station when it started out and throughout many centuries before it fell into ruins after the 9 Years' War, just like the previous two. Stolzenfels would be gifted to the then Prince and future King of Prussia, who transformed it into a 19th century neo-Gothic palace. War and time played a major role with destruction and deterioration of most castles. Naturally, some fell into ruins while others would be reconstructed. Reichenstein, known for lawlessness and robber barons, was destroyed in 1282 by the order of King Rudolf. Builders attempted to bring it back to its original prominence to no avail. This went on for centuries, leading to crumbling walls and being overtaken by vegetation. In the 1800s, the property would be purchased by a private owner and rebuilt neo-Gothic style, as this was very popular in the 19th century. Fürstenberg is a spitting image of destruction and neglect. This is what's left of a fortress built to defend its region. For centuries, it served its purpose until 1620 when Spaniards attacked it in the 30 Years' War. 12 years later, it was attacked once again, this time by Swedish troops. But it was in 1689 when the castle was destroyed by French troops in the 9 Years' War. It was never rebuilt, and today it sits as a bare shell of what it once was. What's castle lore without myths, legends, and romance? Liebenstein, pictured here, has a neighboring castle named Sterenberg just feet away. There is a coral stone wall that separates these two. The story starts when a widowed father, Warner, is living in Sterenburg with his two sons, Henry and Conrad. At some point, a girl named Angela lives with the three. The two boys constantly fight over her affection, both madly in love with Angela, who has more of a liking towards Conrad. What splits this group up is when Conrad is sent on a crusade that lasts several years. Meanwhile, the castle you see pictured, Liebenstein, is built for the new family branch, whether that be for Henry or Conrad, whoever has a family first. Years later, Conrad finally returns, but not by himself. Standing with him is his new lover, a woman who helped him escape prison in Greece. Conrad had assumed Angela married his brother. Angela, on the other hand, was madly in love with Conrad, so she planned to just wait upon his return. Henry, knowing this, grew great resentment towards his brother over the years, and since their father had passed away at this point, there was no voice of reason to settle this. Angela, heartbroken and disappointed from losing a father figure and a lover, ends up leaving the residence and becomes a nun. The two brothers constantly fight and eventually move into separate castles. Henry would eventually find a wife, and Conrad would be the one who built the coral wall, which stands today. And what you see here is what remains from the centuries-old story. But it's not just castles that possess these myths on the Rhine, but also the river itself. Lorelei is said to be a beautiful siren that hangs out near a cliff overlooking the river. She's described as having beautiful golden hair and an irresistible singing voice, which is so enchanting that sailors lose control of their ships and crash into rocks, resulting in their death. Her story was popularized in the early 1800s. There have been songs, paintings, and countless stories about Lorelei, the siren of the Rhine. And here is Rhinestein. It's not tied to folk tales like Liebenstein or Lorelei. What makes it legendary is what it symbolizes. Once a ruin on the river, Rhinestein rose again in the 1800s, not as a fortress, but as a fantasy. It was rebuilt as a monument to everything the 19th century longed to believe about the medieval past. And for the wine lovers out there, the residence has a 500-year-old grapevine that still produces wine. And to recap, in 1117, Marksburg was built as a stronghold to protect its region and wound up being the only Rhine castle to never be destroyed. About a century later, Ehrenfels was established to enforce tolls on the river. Reichenstein would be destroyed by the orders of King Rudolf in 1282 in the fight against robber barons and lawlessness. Liebenstein was built in 1284, which means the story of the hostile brothers would take place around this time. A lot going on for Fürstenberg in the 1600s, starting with the attack in the 30 Years' War, followed by another attack, this time by Swedish troops. And in 1689, French troops would destroy many castles in the 9 Years' War, including Fürstenberg, Stolzenfels, and Schönberg. Lorelei, the siren of the Rhine, would be popularized in the 1800s. In 1825, Rhinestein was rebuilt to resemble everything loved about medieval castles. In 1834, reconstruction of Sunnik into a royal hunting lodge begins, and finally, during March of 1945, Marksburg was damaged during World War II.
From the days of Julius Caesar building bridges 2,000 years ago to Lorelei the Siren and the Hostile Brothers, this has been Before and After Castles on the Rhine. Thanks for watching. Auf Wiedersehen.